Underworld Goddess of the Closed World was imported into the TCG back in 2021 with the release of Blazing Vortex, reintroducing a rare effect allowing it to be summoned using an opponent's monster as one of its link material, an effect only granted to 5 cards in the game. Once on the board, it acts as a floodgate and also has a quick effect negate. These traits should add up to an extra deck staple, but one thing held it back. A Link 5 carries a hefty price tag, and Goddess is no different. Because of this, she was quickly relegated to a fringe extra deck choice, making rare appearances in rogue decks that can pump out a ton of bodies, while being easily replaceable in top decks. After the hype surrounding the latest Konami waifu bait died off, not much thought was given to the Queen of the Dead. That is, until Konami released a small piece of lore with the valuable book EX1. A goddess who inherits the blood of heaven, who is trapped and grieving on the other side, but glows with an unmatched aura while accompanied by her beloved dragon Kur. Deprived of light, she rejects everyone else, and refuses to forgive the world of the living. When someone appears before her, the light goes out. There is no one who has ever seen her cold beauty, and only the fact she exists is known. Her name is Eris, and she used to have the sparkle of sunlight in her eyes. And with that, my interest was piqued. There are a lot of clues regarding the inspiration behind this card in this single paragraph. The first step to unraveling this mystery is to take a look at her name in the OCG, Saros Eris Kur Nugias. Saros refers to a cycle of 223 lunar months, or a little over 18 years, that can be used to predict both solar and lunar eclipses. Her name, as indicated by the official lore, is a shorthand form of the name Ereshkigal, a Mesopotamian goddess of the underworld that held a senior status among the underworld deities, ruling over the category of the so-called Trans-Tigridian snake gods, a group of deities that developed between Sumero-Akkadian and Elamite cultures. This is likely the reason Kur takes the form of a serpent, and Kur Nugias is based on Kur Nugi, one of the many terms used for the underworld in ancient Mesopotamian mythology. Another one of these aliases was Kur, after which Eris named her faithful companion. Kur Nugi specifically was used in the myth Nergal and Ereshkigal. This myth highlights the story of how Ereshkigal became married to the Mesopotamian god of war, pestilence, and death, Nergal. And as you could imagine, considering the parties involved, the events leading up to this unholy union were messy, to say the least. The story goes that a feast was arranged for all of the gods to attend. Ereshkigal was unable to make it, as the underworld could not be left unattended. Death doesn't take a day off, after all. So in her place, she sent her son Namtar. Upon his arrival, all of the gods stood in respect for his mother, all except one. This show of blatant disrespect angered the Queen of Darkness and demanded that Nergal be sent to her realm below the surface to face punishment for his actions. She was going to kill him. But her father god Enki was aware of this plan, and war was of massive importance to the Mesopotamians. As such, he sent 14 demon guards along with Nergal to assure he would return. Now the path to the underworld is lined by 7 gates, each of which requiring a sacrifice of something of importance from the traveler. Usually. Nergal, knowing this, circumvented the process by posting 2 of his demon guards at each gate to ensure they'd stay open. When he reached the final chamber on the other side of the 7th gate, he found Namtar and Ereshkigal waiting for him. Being the cunning strategist he was, he swiftly overpowered Namtar, then made his way to Ereshkigal, dragging her from her throne and tossing her to the floor. He raised his great axe, ready to remove the queen's head, when she began to plead for her life. Ereshkigal promised to share her power with him if he would spare her. Nergal relents, seemingly remorseful for what he's done. They share a kiss, and Nergal is able to leave the underworld without having to offer a replacement, as he is now a consort of the land of the dead, and they lived happily ever after. So pretty much exactly how I proposed to my wife. Up until just recently, this was the extent to which these 2 deities existed within Yugioh. But if you've played the game at all recently, you've probably become familiar with a figure of strikingly similar appearance. Moon of the Closed Heaven graces us with her grim presence following the release of Infinite Forbidden. At first glance, she appears to be a younger version of Eris, but her name in the OCG suggests otherwise. Saros Nana contains the same term referenced by the Underworld goddess, linking moon to solar and lunar eclipses as well. Nana, however, connects her to a completely separate goddess. Inanna is the Mesopotamian goddess of the moon and the sister of Ereshkigal. And while her Yugioh counterpart has become a massive piece of the metagame, her actual effect is, well, bad. She does share the same ability to use opponents' monsters as link material, albeit in a far less effective measure. Her value is in what she is, a light fiend that can be used to summon this abomination. It could just be coincidence, but this just so happens to reflect the story of Queen Inanna's descent. This 4,000-year-old story tells the tale of Inanna taking a transformative journey through the Underworld. As is the nature with a story this old, it has been told and retold countless times, and has almost certainly been adapted by each storyteller for one reason or another. This with the intention of delivering the message as effectively as possible. So in the spirit of ancient minstrels, I will do the same. Inanna, the Queen of Light, was a successful and well-respected leader. She enjoyed a life of luxury in the upper world and felt certain of her place in it. This changed when she one day began to hear faint whispers urging her to visit the Underworld. She ignored these whispers at first. She had no desire to visit the Underworld after all. All that awaited her there was a visit with her sister Ereshkigal, Queen of Darkness and all that lay in the shadows, and her dreadful husband Nergal. Her attempts to ignore the call failed, as the whispers only grew louder as time continued to pass. They prompted her to come and see what she has not yet seen, to experience what she has not yet experienced, and to learn what she does not yet know. She recruited the help of her assistant, Nin Shibur, as she outfitted herself in her royal crown, bracelets, necklaces, and rings of gold. A breastplate is fastened over top a thick royal cloak to guard her heart. All the while, Nin Shibur tries valiantly to sway her from going. No one has gone to the Underworld and returned unscathed. Most don't ever return at all. Inanna declines her heartfelt request, feeling now as though this must be done, but asks her to make a promise. If I don't return in 3 days, bang the drums and gather my people. Tell them what has become of me, then go to the elders and ask them to help bring me back. Nin Shibur agrees, still shaken by the danger that lies before her queen, yet steadfast in her duties to Inanna. And with that, the queen sets off. The first obstacle on her path is met early. The first of the 7 gates stands before her, dark and foreboding. Inanna knocks at the first gate, and the voice of Nettie, the chief gatekeeper of the Underworld, echoes out in return. Who are you, and why have you come? I am Inanna, Queen of Heaven and Earth. Please grant me passage. I have come to see what I have not yet seen, experience what I have not yet experienced, and learn what I do not yet know. The gatekeeper notifies Ereshkigal of her sister's presence, angering the shadowy monarch. Nettie is ordered to bolt the gates shut. Passage may only be allowed once Inanna has given up a valuable item at each of the gates. At the first gate, she must hand over her royal crown. Inanna is hesitant to give up the symbol of what she had worked so hard to earn, but the crown means nothing without her loyal subjects looking to her for guidance. And in this place exists only despair. The crown is relinquished, and she has unwittingly stumbled into Ereshkigal's plan to humble Inanna before entering her kingdom. She continues to the second gate, meeting it again with the same vigor with which she began. Her bracelet is now collected as payment to allow her through. On her way to the next gate, she finds herself contemplating which item she would be stripped of this time, yet still speaks with confidence after knocking at the third gate. She hands over the golden necklace requested of her, noticing how dull it has become here in the shadows. At this moment, she realizes that she will be stripped of all royal adornments before reaching her sister. Ereshkigal wants to make her weak. This process repeats at the fourth gate, then the fifth. All the while, the path continues to narrow as she descends, until eventually being reduced to crawling on her hands and knees. She arrives at the sixth gate, hardly able to remember why she began this journey in the first place. This time, without being asked, her breastplate is taken from her, and the gate creaks open. She now sits vulnerable, her heart exposed, and begins to question if it is even worth completing this pilgrimage. She turns to see that the path she'd traveled to reach this point had vanished, and so there was no choice but to move forward. Eventually, Inanna reaches the final gate. She taps weakly on the door, now without a shred of the tenacity she once held. All she has left to offer is her final piece of clothing, her cloak. With no other option, she makes the sacrifice and continues to meet her sister, now completely exposed. She enters the throne room broken and humbled, and is met by Ereshkigal, staring down at her from her great throne. Through the power of her deadly gaze, Ereshkigal kills her sister before hanging her corpse from a hook so that she might admire her barbarous work. On the surface, 3 days pass, at which point Nin Shibur recognizes the fate that has befallen Inanna. She does as instructed and bangs the drums to inform the gathering people that their queen has descended into the Underworld and has not returned. The elders are assembled, and the party makes haste into the Underworld, easily passing each gate, for there is no possession more valuable than the safety of their friend. They burst into the throne room, now bathed in darkness and panic. "Who are you?" spoke a sinister voice. "If you are gods, I will talk with you. If you are mortals, may a destiny be decreed for you." The congregation now witnessed the lifeless body dangling from the hook as Ereshkigal reveals herself from the shadows. "Give us the corpse you have hung from the hook," they exclaimed. Ereshkigal was indifferent to the demand. The goddess was already dead. She removed Inanna from the hook, unable to foresee what would happen next. The elders then graced the remains with the food of life, a magical substance able to resurrect the dead. The group watch anxiously as Inanna is slowly filled with life once again. Ereshkigal, still apathetic, returns to her seat in the shadows as the group turns to bring Inanna back to the upper world, but they are stopped by the demon guards. Inanna may not be permitted to leave unless a new soul is offered in her place. The goddess is filled with dread as she looks around at all of the loyal friends that risked life and limb to save her, and realizes that she could never leave one of them behind. On the verge of deciding to stay, she realizes someone is missing. "Where is my husband? Does Dumuzi not mourn my death?" Ninshibur whispered quietly in response. He remains dressed in his finery, still sitting atop his magnificent throne. Now furious and heartbroken, Inanna turns to the guards. "My husband shall take my place." The guards nod in agreement and step aside, allowing the elders, Ninshibur, and their queen to begin the journey back. As they travel back through each gate, Inanna is permitted to retrieve each of the items that had been given up. But now, with a renewed vision of the world, she questions the value of each item that she once valued so deeply. Does this cloak hold any real power? Does the breastplate, the jewelry, or even the crown? Upon this realization, Inanna decides to return to the surface, leaving everything behind, now more humble and wise. The old queen remains dead, but a stronger queen has taken her place. It is not a shell of extravagance that makes a leader great, but the person that lies beneath.